Welcome to the Deep Dive Canada, and thanks, listeners, for continued support.
Hello, everyone.
We are diving deep today into, well, one of the most explosive and just transformative stories in Canadian history.
The Klondike Gold Rush.
Exactly. We've assembled a stack of sources that, they don't just recount the facts, they really analyze the sheer frenzy of the late 1800s.
Mm-hmm. A time when this icy, remote wilderness held a secret.
A secret so powerful it pulled tens of thousands of people from all around the globe. We're talking about rivers whispering over stones that glittered not with frost, but with actual spectacular gold.
That imagery is perfect because this deep dive is all about understanding that sudden burst of history.
Right.
It was a chaotic 3-year period that just redefined the North. It mixed immense physical courage with, raw greed, desperation, and unbelievable hope.
So our mission today is to move beyond just the adventure story and look at the true significance.
That's it. How did the discovery of a few ounces of placer gold transform the entire geopolitical landscape of Canada's north? I mean, establishing towns, industries, and firm sovereignty where before there was almost nothing.
That's a core question we'll unpack for you.
So let's start at the beginning.
Okay, let's start right at the spark. It began quietly, far from any global spotlight.
Very quietly.
The sources, they pinpoint the exact moment, August 16th, 1896.
On a narrow tributary of the Klondike River, which at the time was just known as Rabbit Creek.
And who was there?
The initial party was George Carmack and 2 members of the Tagish First Nation.
Okay.
Carmack's brother-in-law, Skookum Jim, and his nephew, Dawson Charlie. They weren't really formal prospectors. They were out hunting and fishing people who knew the land.
And the aha moment itself is just, it's pure legend.
It really is.
Skookum Jim was reportedly kneeling to drink from the creek, and he spotted a glint beneath the water.
He pulls out a nugget. Our sources really emphasize this. It was a nugget, not just fine dust.
A nugget that shimmered brighter than the morning sun.
And that distinction is crucial. I mean, gold dust could be disappointing.
Right.
But a nugget. That meant a mother lode was nearby. It signaled undeniable concentrated wealth.
So what happened next?
Well, within 24 hours, they staked 4 claims, and Rabbit Creek was instantly rechristened as Bonanza Creek.
Bonanza Creek. But what's so remarkable here is the delay, right? This all happened in August 1896.
Yet the world didn't find out for nearly a year. You have to imagine the distance, the deep freeze of a Yukon winter.
And just the sheer difficulty of communicating this kind of seismic news. There were no telegraphs easily accessible up there.
Exactly. So it wasn't until the following summer, July 1897, when the first successful prospectors finally made it back down to the ports in the States, that the secret was truly out.
And when it broke, it was explosive.
Oh, absolutely.
We're talking about the moment the steamship Excelsior docked in San Francisco, and then a few days later, the Portland in Seattle.
And when those Stampeders came down the gangplank, they weren't just carrying sacks.
No, they had suitcases, even crude buckets, just filled with gold. We're talking over $1 million worth in 1897 money.
Which is just a staggering amount. And the newspapers, of course, they went for maximum hype. They didn't just report it.
They manufactured a myth. The headline that really launched the stampede, it's cited in all our material.
A ton of gold from the Klondike.
And that wasn't just news, it was a siren call.
People didn't walk. They fled their ordinary lives. Think about the scope of this.
Yeah.
You have farmers leaving their fields.
And bankers abandoning their desks. Clerks quitting mid-shift.
Entire ships were chartered and filled with dreamers, all of them convinced they were headed straight for a fortune.
And that manufactured moment is what defines the rush, but all that hype, it completely obscured the reality.
The incredibly lethal journey just to get there.
Yeah, the real challenge wasn't finding the gold, it was getting there alive. You had to cross the coastal mountains, which were
virtually impenetrable. And the sources detail these 2 notorious paths that became legend, Chilkoot Pass and White Pass.
And this is where we see the crucial involvement of the Canadian government.
Right, the Northwest Mounted Police, the NWMP, they set up checkpoints at the summits. They had to impose order.
What was their big rule?
Their big rule was life-saving, but incredibly stringent. Every single person was required to carry 1 ton of supplies.
A ton.
A ton. Enough food, clothing, and gear to last them a full year in that subarctic environment. If you didn't have the ton, you were turned back.
That requirement changes everything. It reframes the entire journey, not just as a physical ordeal, but as a deliberate act of geopolitical gatekeeping.
Absolutely. While it saved thousands from starvation, its primary function was control.
Okay.
By controlling the flow of people and goods, the NWMP prevented mass panic, and more importantly, they established Canadian law and order before American lawlessness could set in.
Which was a very real fear at the time.
It was. It cemented Canadian authority in the Yukon immediately.
It also kind of segregated the Stampeders, didn't it? The Chilkoot Pass was nicknamed the poor man's route.
It was the shortest path, but an almost vertical, 1,000-foot climb in less than a mile. A frozen staircase.
The sources offer this really striking visual of Chilkoot. A frozen staircase of humanity, tiny silhouettes climbing toward the summit like ants beneath a sky of snow.
And prospectors had to climb that icy slope up to 30, maybe 40 times, just hauling small bits of their one-ton supply.
Unbelievable. And what was the other route?
That was the White Pass, or the All-American Road. It was longer and less steep, but it was known as the Dead Horse Trail.
Dead Horse Trail.
Yeah, because it was so rough and muddy that thousands of pack animals just perished. This route required capital. You had to afford horses or pay handlers.
So the journey itself was a brutal filter.
It was. By the time prospectors reached the headwaters of the Yukon River, thousands had given up, or worse. But the ones who made it, they truly believed the worst was over.
But the worst was often still ahead. The reality of Dawson City. Dawson City just exploded. It popped up at the confluence of the Yukon and Klondike rivers.
It was a quiet wilderness camp one month, and the heart of the gold rush the next.
Instant urbanization on frozen ground. We read about saloons overflowing with music, dance halls glittering with electric lights.
Imported from afar, yeah. And the streets were just mud, choked with humanity. But let's look at the economics for a minute.
Oh.
While the dream was digging for gold, the real money was made by the entrepreneurs. We're talking hyperinflation.
Like what?
A single egg could cost $1. Flour that you hauled all the way over the passes could be sold for enormous profit. Fortunes were made instantly by people selling hot baths, supplies, or running the gambling dens.
So it's an age-old story, right? The people selling the shovels made more than the miner.
Pretty much. And for the miners themselves, the vast majority arrived too late, between 1897 and 1898.
So the best claims were already gone.
All gone. Especially on Bonanza and El Dorado Creeks. They were already staked.
And even if you got a claim, it wasn't easy work.
Hardly. The gold lay under thick layers of permafrost. You couldn't just shovel it out. You had to thaw the ground with fires or steam.
This process called shafting and drifting.
Exactly. And only then could you watch the gravel during that very short summer thaw. It was incredibly technical, back-breaking work.
So yeah, the sources mention these miracle stories, men pulling thousands of dollars from a single pan.
Sure, but the statistical truth is that the vast majority found just enough to survive, or nothing at all. The gamble was fueled by manufactured optimism.
And the whole frenzy was so brief, it barely lasted 3 years.
Yeah, by 1899, the Klondike Gold Rush was effectively over.
What happened? Why so suddenly?
The main reason was a new discovery in Nome, Alaska.
Ah.
And it pulled thousands of people away from Dawson City almost instantly. The same media that built the Klondike myth just switched focus to Nome, and the population collapsed.
So the gold didn't just disappear, but the engine of the boom did.
That's a great way to put it. It highlights how fragile these resource booms really are.
But the legacy of that short period is immense and permanent for Canada.
Absolutely. First, it brought tens of thousands of newcomers to the north, fundamentally changing the population.
It also cemented that Canadian sovereignty we talked about earlier.
Right. The NWMP's successful handling of the stampede meant Canada gained firm administrative control, which led directly to the establishment of the Yukon Territory in 1898.
And it forced infrastructure development. It sparked industries, established towns, created transportation routes.
Routes that are still vital today. It really put Dawson City on the map as a cultural touchstone.
And we have to acknowledge the severe impact it had on the indigenous peoples of the area.
We do. For the Klondike Chilkoot First Nation, their traditional lands were just transformed. This sudden influx of settlers, the resource extraction, it severely disrupted their way of life.
It was a massive dislocation.
It was. The gold ran thin, but the stories from those few years remain enormous. It was an instant history creator.
More than a century has passed, but the echoes of those pickaxes and the creaking of sleds still seem to ring through the Yukon valleys. It remains an extraordinary, defining moment.
For sure. Before we close this deep dive, take a moment to reflect on the extreme disparity. You have this handful of individuals whose names became synonymous with wealth.
Right.
And then the thousands who endured that brutal one-ton journey. What level of certainty or maybe desperation drives humanity to risk everything, life, savings, stability, on such a slender chance of striking it rich? It's a powerful thought that goes way beyond the gold.
Thanks for tuning in to The Deep Dive Canada. Don't forget to comment, like, and subscribe for more deep dives. See you in the next episode.